There exists a profound paradox in human nature that most people will never understand, and it cost one of history's greatest strategic minds his life at just 30 years old. Minamoto no Yoshitsune possessed 5 extraordinary traits that made him both the most feared warrior and the most misunderstood soul of feudal Japan. And these same characteristics continue to appear in exceptional individuals today, often leading them to feel isolated, undervalued, and ultimately destroyed by the very societies they serve. If you have ever felt like your unique way of thinking makes you an outsider, if you have ever been punished for being too innovative, too direct, or too uncompromising in your pursuit of excellence, then you share something profound with this legendary figure whose story reveals timeless truths about the price of greatness and the courage required to remain authentic in a world that fears what it cannot understand. Before we dive deeper into these life-changing insights, I need you to do something that will help not just you, but everyone watching this video. Take a moment right now to hit that like button if you have ever felt misunderstood for being different. Subscribe to this channel if you are ready to embrace your unique strengths instead of hiding them. And most importantly, leave a comment below telling me which of these 5 traits resonates most with your own experience. Your engagement helps the algorithm share this transformative wisdom with others who desperately need to hear it. And your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to read to feel less alone in their journey. The first trait that made Yoshitsune both extraordinary and threatening was his ability to see strategic possibilities that others considered impossible, a quality that philosophers call transcendent pattern recognition. While conventional military minds of his era followed established protocols and predictable formations, Yoshitsune possessed an almost supernatural ability to perceive hidden opportunities in seemingly hopeless situations. During the Battle of Ichinotani in 1184, when faced with an impregnable cliff fortress that had never been successfully attacked, every traditional military advisor declared the position unassailable. Yet Yoshitsune saw what others could not: a narrow deer path that would allow a small cavalry force to descend the steep cliff face in a surprise attack that would change the course of Japanese history forever. This was not mere tactical cleverness, but a fundamental difference in how his mind processed complex systems and possibilities. This transcendent pattern recognition manifests in modern life as the ability to see solutions where others see only problems, to identify opportunities that conventional wisdom dismisses as impossible, and to navigate complex social and professional situations with an intuitive understanding that often appears mysterious to others. People with this trait frequently find themselves frustrated by colleagues who cannot see obvious solutions, isolated by family members who consider their ideas too risky or unconventional, and misunderstood by friends who interpret their confidence as arrogance. In your personal life, this means trusting your ability to see patterns and possibilities that others miss, even when you cannot immediately explain your insights in ways that conventional thinkers can understand. In your relationships, it means accepting that you will often need to lead others through changes they cannot yet envision, requiring patience and gentle persistence rather than frustrated explanations. In your professional life, this trait can become your greatest asset if you learn to present your unconventional insights in language that addresses the specific concerns and limitations of more traditional thinkers. The second defining characteristic was his complete emotional detachment during critical decision-making moments, what ancient Japanese philosophy calls the state of mushin, or no mind. Unlike the passionate warriors who fought from anger, revenge, or glory-seeking, Yoshitsune entered battle with a crystalline mental clarity that allowed him to make split-second strategic adjustments without being clouded by fear, ego, or emotional attachment to predetermined outcomes. This was not cold indifference, but rather a profound level of mental discipline that enabled him to respond to rapidly changing circumstances with perfect adaptability. When his own brother Yoritomo began plotting against him, Yoshitsune maintained this same emotional detachment, analyzing the political situation with the same objective clarity he brought to military campaigns, even though it meant acknowledging that his most trusted family relationship had become a mortal threat. This emotional detachment becomes a survival tool in our modern world of constant drama, office politics, and relationship manipulation. People who develop this trait can navigate toxic environments without absorbing the negative energy around them, make important life decisions based on logical analysis rather than temporary emotional states, and maintain their inner peace even when surrounded by chaos. However, this same quality often makes others perceive them as cold, unfeeling, or disloyal, because most people expect emotional reactions to validate their own experiences. In your personal life, this means learning to express care and concern in ways that others can recognize, even while maintaining your inner emotional equilibrium. You might need to verbally acknowledge others' emotions and explain your thought processes more explicitly than feels natural. In your relationships, this trait requires conscious effort to create emotional intimacy through consistent actions and clear communication, since your natural tendency toward analytical detachment might be misinterpreted as lack of caring. In your professional environment, you can leverage this ability to remain calm during crises and make objective decisions under pressure. But you must also learn to show appropriate emotional engagement during team interactions to avoid being labeled as disconnected or uncommitted. Now, I want to pause here and speak directly to you because I know that as you are listening to this, you might be recognizing yourself in these descriptions, and you might be feeling a mixture of validation and sadness. You might be thinking about all the times you have been misunderstood, criticized, or excluded because your mind works differently, because you see things others cannot see, because you remain calm when others expect you to be emotional. I want you to know that there is nothing wrong with you, and in fact, these very traits that have made you feel like an outsider are actually indicators of a rare type of intellectual and emotional evolution that the world desperately needs. The loneliness you feel is not because you are defective, but because you are operating at a level of consciousness that most people have not yet reached. And rather than trying to diminish yourself to fit in, your task is to learn how to use these gifts responsibly while finding others who can appreciate and support your authentic nature. The third trait that defined Yoshitsune was his unwavering commitment to personal principles, even when it meant sacrificing immediate advantages or popular approval, a characteristic that philosophers call ethical absolutism. During an era when political alliances shifted constantly and loyalty was often determined by expedience, Yoshitsune maintained a rigid moral code that prioritized honor, justice, and genuine service over personal gain. When offered opportunities to betray his principles for political advantage, he consistently chose the more difficult path that aligned with his deepest values. This was not naive idealism, but a sophisticated understanding that temporary compromises of integrity create long-term spiritual and practical consequences that ultimately undermine everything a person builds. Even when his brother's jealousy and political maneuvering made it clear that maintaining his principles would likely cost him his life, Yoshitsune refused to engage in the manipulative tactics that might have saved him, choosing instead to remain true to his authentic nature regardless of the consequences. This ethical absolutism appears in modern individuals as an inability to participate in systems or relationships that require them to compromise their core values, even when such participation would provide obvious benefits. These people often struggle in corporate environments that prioritize profits over principles, find themselves excluded from social groups that engage in gossip or manipulation, and experience relationship difficulties with partners who expect them to bend their values for the sake of keeping peace. While this trait can create significant practical challenges, it also enables them to build lives of genuine integrity and to serve as moral anchors for others who lack the courage to stand up for what they believe. In your personal life, this means accepting that you will sometimes need to choose difficult paths that align with your values, rather than easy paths that provide immediate gratification or approval. You may need to leave relationships, jobs, or social situations that require you to act against your conscience, even when others consider you foolish for walking away from apparent opportunities. In your relationships, this trait requires finding partners and friends who respect your integrity rather than trying to convince you to be more flexible or practical in your moral standards. In your professional life, you must either find organizations whose values align with yours, or create your own path where you can operate according to your principles, understanding that this may mean slower advancement or fewer traditional markers of success, but will ultimately lead to much greater fulfillment and authentic achievement. The fourth characteristic that made Yoshitsune both remarkable and dangerous to the established order was his complete lack of social ambition in the conventional sense, combined with an intense focus on mastering his craft for its own sake rather than for external recognition or power. While other samurai sought political positions, land holdings, and social status, Yoshitsune was motivated purely by the pursuit of strategic and tactical perfection. He studied warfare not to gain prestige, but because he was fascinated by the intellectual challenges of military problem-solving. This genuine indifference to traditional rewards made him unpredictable, and therefore threatening to those who understood only power dynamics based on obvious ambitions and desires. Politicians and rival warriors could not manipulate him through conventional incentives because he genuinely did not want what they had to offer, making him impossible to control through the usual mechanisms of social influence. This intrinsic motivation, rather than external validation, creates individuals who pursue excellence for its own sake, often becoming world-class in their chosen fields, while remaining relatively unknown or undervalued by mainstream society. They are driven by curiosity, craftsmanship, and the satisfaction of solving complex problems rather than by money, fame, or social approval. This trait often leads to frustration with systems that reward self-promotion over actual competence, relationships with people who cannot understand why they are not more ambitious in conventional terms, and careers that may provide deep satisfaction but limited external recognition. However, it also enables them to develop genuine expertise and to create innovative solutions that more externally motivated people never discover because they are too focused on managing appearances and playing social games. In your personal life, this means honoring your natural interests and allowing yourself to pursue excellence in areas that genuinely fascinate you. Even if others consider your passions strange or impractical, you may need to create your own definitions of success that prioritize internal satisfaction and mastery over external metrics like income or social status. In your relationships, you will be happiest with people who appreciate your dedication to your craft and who do not constantly pressure you to be more socially ambitious or conventional in your goals. In your professional life, you can leverage this trait by becoming genuinely excellent at what you do, understanding that true mastery will eventually be recognized and valued, even if it takes longer than it would for someone who focuses primarily on networking and self-promotion. I need to stop here for a moment because I can sense that some of you are feeling overwhelmed by how accurately these descriptions match your own experience, and others might be feeling defensive because you recognize people in your life who have these traits but have judged them harshly. If you are recognizing yourself in these patterns, please understand that you are not broken or difficult. You are simply wired differently, and the world needs people like you to challenge conventional thinking and create breakthrough solutions. If you are recognizing others in your life, please consider that what you might have interpreted as arrogance, coldness, or stubbornness might actually be rare forms of intelligence and integrity that deserve your respect and support rather than your criticism or attempts to change them. The fifth and most misunderstood trait was Yoshitsune's prophetic awareness of systemic problems and long-term consequences that others could not yet see, combined with a compulsive need to address these issues, even when doing so made him unpopular or created immediate difficulties. He could perceive political and social patterns that would lead to problems years in the future, and he felt morally obligated to speak about these concerns even when his warnings were unwelcome. This was not pessimism or negativity, but rather a sophisticated ability to analyze complex systems and predict their failure points before those failures became obvious to everyone else. When he warned about the dangers of the political structures his brother was creating, his concerns were dismissed as jealousy or disloyalty, but history proved that his predictions were remarkably accurate. The same political system he criticized eventually led to centuries of internal conflict and the eventual decline of the very power structures his family had worked to establish. This prophetic systems thinking manifests in modern individuals as an uncanny ability to predict relationship problems before they become obvious, to identify flaws in business models or organizational structures that others cannot yet see, and to recognize social and political trends that will create future difficulties. These people often become frustrated watching others make predictable mistakes, feel compelled to warn people about problems they can see developing, and experience the loneliness of being consistently proven right about things they wish they had been wrong about. Their attempts to help others avoid future problems are often interpreted as negativity, criticism, or attempts to control, leading to social isolation and the painful experience of watching preventable disasters unfold exactly as they predicted. In your personal life, this means learning to share your insights gently and strategically, focusing on specific situations where your warnings can actually make a difference, rather than trying to save everyone from every mistake you can foresee. You may need to accept that most people can only learn from direct experience, rather than from logical analysis of patterns and consequences. In your relationships, this trait requires finding people who value your analytical abilities and who understand that your concerns come from caring rather than from pessimism or control issues. In your professional life, you can use this ability to provide valuable strategic planning and risk assessment, but you must learn to present your insights in ways that address immediate business concerns rather than abstract long-term possibilities. The tragic irony of Yoshitsune's story is that these 5 extraordinary traits, which made him one of the most effective military strategists in Japanese history, ultimately led to his destruction because the very people who benefited from his abilities could not understand or trust his unconventional nature. His brother Yoritomo, despite owing his political success largely to Yoshitsune's military victories, became convinced that someone so unpredictable and principled could never be reliably controlled and therefore posed a long-term threat to the stability of the new political order. This pattern repeats throughout history and continues in our modern world, where exceptional individuals are often destroyed by the very institutions they serve, because their unique perspectives and unwillingness to conform make others feel threatened or inadequate. The profound lesson of Yoshitsune's life is not that you should hide or diminish your unique traits to avoid conflict, but rather that you must develop the wisdom to recognize which environments and relationships can support your authentic nature, and which ones will inevitably try to destroy it. This requires a level of strategic thinking about your own life that most people never develop. Learning to identify the difference between people who are merely uncomfortable with your differences and people who are actively threatened by them. You must cultivate relationships with others who possess similar traits, or who have the emotional maturity to appreciate qualities they do not themselves possess, while maintaining appropriate boundaries with those who need you to be smaller or more conventional in order to feel secure about themselves. Understanding these 5 traits, transcendent pattern recognition, emotional detachment during decision-making, ethical absolutism, intrinsic motivation, and prophetic systems thinking, provides a roadmap for navigating the world as an exceptional individual without sacrificing your authentic nature or allowing others to manipulate you into conformity. Each trait requires specific strategies for expression and protection, and together they form a framework for building a life of genuine fulfillment and meaningful contribution, while avoiding the tragic isolation that befell Yoshitsune and countless others who never learned to manage their gifts wisely. The key to successfully embodying these traits in modern life lies in understanding that your differences are not obstacles to overcome, but rather rare capacities to develop and share responsibly. Your ability to see possibilities others cannot see is not arrogance but genuine perception that the world needs, provided you learn to communicate your insights in ways that others can understand and implement. Your emotional detachment is not coldness, but rather a form of mental discipline that enables you to remain stable and helpful when others are overwhelmed by chaos or crisis. Your commitment to your principles is not stubbornness, but rather an essential anchor that enables you to serve as a moral reference point for others who lack your clarity and courage. Your focus on intrinsic excellence rather than external rewards is not lack of ambition, but rather a mature understanding of what creates lasting satisfaction and genuine contribution. Your awareness of systemic problems and long-term consequences is not negativity, but rather a responsibility to help others avoid predictable difficulties, and to contribute to the creation of more sustainable and ethical systems. The practical application of this wisdom requires ongoing attention to 3 crucial areas of development. First, you must learn to identify and cultivate relationships with people who can appreciate your unique perspective without feeling threatened by it, understanding that these relationships will likely be fewer in number, but much deeper in quality than the superficial connections that satisfy most people. Second, you must develop sophisticated communication skills that enable you to share your insights and perspectives in ways that others can receive and benefit from, rather than simply expressing your authentic thoughts without regard for how others might interpret them. Third, you must create or find work environments and social contexts that can utilize your specific combination of abilities, rather than trying to force yourself into systems that require you to suppress or compromise your essential nature. This journey of authentic self-expression while maintaining effective relationships and meaningful contribution is not easy, and it requires a level of conscious development that most people never attempt. However, the alternative is to spend your life feeling frustrated, misunderstood, and wasted, watching others make preventable mistakes while you remain silent to avoid conflict, hiding your insights to avoid being labeled as arrogant or difficult, and compromising your principles to maintain relationships that ultimately cannot provide the depth and authenticity your nature requires. The world desperately needs people who can see beyond conventional limitations, who can remain calm and objective during crises, who will stand for principles even when it costs them personally, who pursue excellence for its own sake rather than for external rewards, and who can anticipate and prevent problems that others cannot yet recognize. These are not character flaws to be managed or hidden, but rather essential capacities that must be developed and expressed responsibly for the benefit of everyone. As we conclude this exploration of these 5 rare traits and their profound implications for living an authentic and meaningful life, I want you to take a moment to reflect on how this understanding might change your relationship with your own unique characteristics and with others who possess similar gifts. Rather than viewing your differences as sources of isolation or difficulty, you can now begin to see them as indicators of rare forms of intelligence and integrity that the world needs you to develop and share. Rather than trying to become more conventional or socially acceptable, you can focus on becoming more skilled at expressing your authentic nature in ways that others can appreciate and benefit from. This transformation requires commitment, practice, and often significant changes in how you structure your life, relationships, and work. But the result is the possibility of living with genuine integrity while making meaningful contributions that align with your deepest values and capabilities. You no longer need to choose between being authentic and being effective, between staying true to yourself and maintaining positive relationships with others, between following your principles and achieving practical success. Instead, you can learn to be authentically yourself while developing the wisdom and skills necessary to share your gifts in ways that others can receive and appreciate. If this message has resonated with your experience, and you are ready to begin developing these insights into practical life changes, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, where we explore the profound wisdom of historical figures like Minamoto no Yoshitsune, and translate their experiences into actionable guidance for modern life. Click the notification bell to ensure you receive updates when new content becomes available, because this journey of authentic self-development is ongoing and requires consistent reinforcement and refinement. Most importantly, leave a comment below sharing how you plan to apply one specific insight from this video in your own life, because your commitment to implementing these ideas, rather than merely understanding them intellectually, is what will transform knowledge into wisdom and potential into actual positive change. Your comment might also provide exactly the encouragement or perspective that another viewer needs to hear, creating a community of people who understand that being different is not a problem to be solved, but rather a gift to be developed and shared responsibly.